Hello students, welcome again to another wonderful week. This week we'll be looking at the integumentary system. On our review this week, we have the following learning objectives: to describe the functions of the integumentary system and to explain the layers and tissues of the skin. Our key vocabularies: we have epidermis, dermis, sebaceous glands, melanin, keratin, ultraviolet rays, hair follicle, dermis. So we have them in subcutaneous layers. We have them as our key vocabularies this week. So what is the integumentary system? The integumentary system comprises of the skin and its appendages, acting to protect the body from various kinds of damage, such as loss of water or damage from outside. The integumentary system includes hairs, scales, feathers, hooves, and nails. The word integumentary is used to describe any word or any structure that plays a role of being a protective covering, of covering the internal organs. So any of the structures in animals that its major role is to protect the internal organs is what we call an integumentary organ or integumentary system. So in human being, in mammals, we have the skin as the major integumentary system that forms an outer covering of many mammals, especially vertebrates. So the skin is either naked, as in amphibians, or covered with scales when we talk about fishes. Even reptiles also, you see that their skins are covered with scales. Then when you talk about skins that are covered with feathers, we have these in birds. And if you talk about the ones that have hooves on their limbs, we talk about birds too. We see them there. And even nails, we see them. These are part of the integumentary system. These structures make up the integumentary system. So it plays to cover and protect the body. Skin is the major organ of the system. So we'll be looking at the skin majorly because it is the major organ. So whenever we talk about the integumentary system, understand the concept that is all about the organs that plays the role of covering and protecting the body. We have the structure of the skin here, a diagram of the skin. The skin is divided into different layers. Here we have the epidermis, we have the dermis, and we have the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. So when we talk about the epidermis is made up of an outer layer that we call conified or honey layer, this layer here. So the conified layer is the outer layer that is made up of dead, you see, with flat scale cells that is well deposited of keratin at this particular area. So they have a lot of keratin, which make it to be the layer that is tough. Not being tough alone, it's even flexible and plays a role of waterproofing the body. So the conified layer protects the living cells in the body, that all the living cells beneath it protects them. So we say that the first layer is the conified layer or honey layer. Then after that we have the granular layer. The granular layer consists of round living cells which are constantly being replaced by the new cell produced by this third layer, the Malpighian layer. So we have the granular layer here that is made up of round living cells which can be easily replaced by the ones produced by the third segment or section of the epidermis we call the Malpighian or germinative layer. Now when we talk about the germinative layer consists of pigmented cells. So it is a pigmented layer that is actively dividing. It is made up of cells that are actively dividing. These cells contains two pigments which are melanin and keratin. The two cells that are found in the epidermis, to be precise, in the malpighian layer or germinative layer, are the melanin and the keratin. What is the function of melanin? The melanin gives the skin its color, as well as absorb harmful ultraviolet rays from the sun to prevent the skin from injury. While keratin is a protein that is responsible for the toughness and flexibility of the skin. So these are the two pigments that we can see in the malpighian or germinative layer. The dermis, which is the second layer. The dermis is a layer of where you find majorly connective tissues. It contains a lot of connective tissues. You will see blood capillaries. We see blood capillaries here that helps in circulation of blood, food, and oxygen, and as well as remove waste. You will see the sweat gland here, where you see the sweat pore. You see the sweat pore, you see the sweat gland. So, which is responsible? What's the function of the sweat gland? They are found as they are coiled there. Their role there is to conduct sweat towards the outer surface of the skin. They will move through this process, and you see them coming out through the sweat pore. That's the sweat gland. Now, after the sweat gland, we have the sensory or nerve receptors. We have the sensory receptors. The sensory receptors, their function is for sensitivity. They are the receptors that collect informations and send to the nervous system. So we have them here. They are down there in the dermis. They are down there in the dermis to collect informations and also circulate them and send information back to the brain. So in this particular area, you will see different types of sensory receptors. We see touch receptors. We see motor receptors. You see, this is motor receptor. We see thermal receptors, those that are responsible for heat. We see pain receptors. We see pressure receptors here. So these are the different types. Any action that happens within this area is the receptors that will always transmit and send back impulses. After that, we have the hair follicle. We have the hair follicle here. The hair follicle is very deep. It's made up of a deep pit that is found in the malpighian layer. So it stretched from the dermis here towards the malpighian layer. You see the hair follicle. They are epidermal in origin, but their base are deep in the dermis. They are epidermal in origin, but their base is always deep in the dermis. And not just being in dermis, the hair always divide continuously. The hair that they produce always divide continuously to produce a long cylindrical hair that we normally see. As the hair elongates, keratin will keep on being deposited into them and they will die. Remember that the keratin is responsible for bringing about this flexible and not just flexible and waterproof like dead layer that happens at the conified layer of the epidermis. So when the skin hairs are being deposited with keratin, they will eventually die and become a non-living cell. We have the sebaceous gland. The sebaceous gland is responsible, as it originates from the epidermis. Look at it. The sebaceous gland originates from the epidermis. You see, it comes from the epidermis, and it comes down to the dermis. The sebaceous gland secretes sebum. A sebum is an oily substance that is found in the hair follicle. It keeps the skin always waterproofed and flexible. The sebum is always responsible, as well as keep out dust and microorganisms out of this particular area. It keeps dust and microorganisms away from this particular area. Then after that, we have the hypodermis that we call the subcutaneous fatty layer. It is found below the dermis. Not just that it's found below the dermis, it is made up of layers of connective tissues which contain variable amounts of fat. That's why we say adipose tissues are found here. So whenever we call subcutaneous fatty layer or adipose layer or layer that is made up of adipose tissue, we are talking about the hypodermis. It acts as a long-term food storage. It stores food, it stores fat at this particular area. And not just storage of fat alone, it also plays a role of insulation, of insulating the layer and prevent heat loss from the body. So these are the different layers of the skin and different functions which these parts or these tissues plays. We have fingernails and toes, and hairs are part of the integumentary system, as I have said earlier. But nails and hair contain keratin and develop from epithelial cells. Hair cells grow out of the holes in the dermis called the hair follicles. I have explained this earlier in the structure. So, around hair follicle are sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands are oil-producing glands. What are their functions? The sebaceous gland, they are oil-producing glands, and this oil that they produce lubricate the skin and the hair. That's the reason when the glands produce too much oil, the follicle can become inflamed and will block immediately, which will result to white head, black head, or clogged. So, because of too much oil produced from the sebaceous gland, you will see black head. Look at how it looks. You see white heads, you see white heads, and you see clogged pores over the body because of overproduction of oil. Functions of the integumentary system. We have regulation of body temperature. When we talk about the regulation of body temperature, we know that when you are hot, your body sweats. When you are cold, your muscle contracts, causing goosebumps. What happens here? Conversion of energy. Conversion of energy. Vasodilation. Mammals are warm-blooded. Because that they are warm-blooded, which means that their constant temperature is always at 37 degrees Celsius, irrespective of the surrounding. So when an animal is hot, there is excess heat in the body, which means that blood flow in the dermal capillaries is stimulated and the blood vessel in the skin will dilate. The dilation of the flow of the blood in the dermal capillaries that is being stimulated and the dilation of the blood vessels is what we call vasodilation. Let me come again. When the weather is hot, there is excess heat in the body of an animal. Blood will flow in the dermal capillaries. Blood flow in the dermal capillaries is always stimulated and the blood vessels in the skin will dilate. The dilation of this blood vessel in the skin is what we call vasodilation. Vasodilation. Now, the vasodilation brings more blood to the surface to enhance heat loss by convection and radiation. That's why you will see more of convection here, and you see sweat causing heat loss. The sweat glands will, during this time extract large quantities of sweat from the blood. When these large quantities of sweat move out, the heat of evaporization will help the sweat to evaporate through the sweat pores, thereby bringing about cooling the body and lowering the body temperature. What happens when the body is cold? How does animals maintain their body temperature? When the body is cold, the erector muscles, the blood vessels in the skin will constrict. Instead of to dilate, they will constrict. So this constriction is what we call vasoconstriction. Remember, when the blood vessels in the skin dilate, we said it is vasodilation. When the blood vessels in the skin constrict, we say is vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction happens when? During cold. While vasodilation happens when the body is hot. So this brings, during vasoconstriction, it brings less blood to the surface and little or no sweat is produced. Therefore, heat loss by convection and radiation is being reduced. Because whenever radiation is high, it causes heat gain. But when convection is high, it will do what? It will cause more of heat loss. Another function of the skin is that it produces vitamin D. The skin makes use of the infrared rays of the mid early morning sunlight to produce vitamin D. And apart from that, it helps in excretion, removal of waste products from the body through sweat, urea. There are some of the products that are being removed from the body. Water. The skin protects our body and help us sense our surrounding. Two functions here: protection and sensitivity. So these two functions are being played by the skin. It protects our body because of its waterproof nature, as I have discussed earlier. Why sensitivity? Because of the receptors that are found in the dermis, the pain receptor, the touch receptor, the pressure receptor, heat and cold receptors. It makes it able for every individual to be sensitive to changes in its environment and also to respond accordingly. These are different functions of the skin. We'll stop here today in our lesson, as I implore you to study more and expect more of variable questions in your quiz. It can come in any angle, and always give your best. Always give your best. Thank you.